In this week's fishing video forecast for New England, we've got haddock in the Gulf of Maine, excellent sea bass action in both Massachusetts and Connecticut waters. We got updates on the Coastal Kayak Clash fishing tournament, for higher fishing status in light of COVID-19, cod, fluke, and blackfish being landed in Rhode Island. Some really good fluke being caught off Fisher's Island, striped bass and bluefish in Long Island Sound, and great action on the freshwater scene with crappie, largemouth bass, and trout. Let's check it out.
The fishing news is sponsored by these fine partners.
Hey there, Toby Lapinski for the New England edition of the Fisherman magazine with this week's web video fishing forecast for New England. I'm going to jump right into things. Got a lot of pictures submitted this week, a lot of stuff to get to. Unfortunately, I couldn't get to everyone's photos. I apologize, but I did my best getting as many of y'all included in here as I could and still giving a good rundown on what is going on in southern New England. We're going to start off up north where Amanda Beers sent me a photo. She went out haddock fishing this week. She went with the guys up on Eastman's Fleet in Seabrook, New Hampshire. It looks like they did really well. A bunch of haddock they caught. She also said, of course, they got some cod mixed in along the way, but that is closed season right now in the Gulf of Maine, so those fish had to be returned as quickly as possible. But haddock, one of easily my favorite eating local fish that we have around here, so I'm very jealous you came back with a nice pile of tasty haddock fillets. Then next up, got one of the more interesting and surprising catches of the week. Jacob Rushing sent me an email. He set it off with a story. He said he planned on fishing the canal on Saturday. He was going to stay over Friday night with a bunch of his buddies. They were planning on camping out, but the plans got changed as COVID-19 restrictions eliminated the option of using the the tents. So instead, he and his buddies went up to Cape Ann to start off the day. They started throwing a 13.5-inch gravity tackle eel on a half-ounce jig head, one of my favorite lures last season in the surf for sure. And he said on his fifth cast, he had a solid hit. Set up on the fish, fought it, brings it up to shore. It comes into sight. He's expecting to see a good sized striped bass roll up in a surf, and in the end it turned out to be his first ever blackfish. A real nice sized fish. He took a quick couple of photos, let it go, but that is certainly a catch that he is not going to soon forget, and not something that you hear every day. But they weren't done. They caught a couple of more fish and decided he and his buddies were going to head down to the canal just after sunrise. So he said they got there. Water was a little bit choppy, sun was just starting to come up, beautiful conditions. One of the guys got a small striped bass, and Jacob's working his pencil popper. A fish blows up on it, completely missed. A couple more pops, fish came back, exploded again. This time the hooks found their mark, fought the fish, took him down into the rocks, and in the end he ended up landing a really nice striped bass. Ended up being 28.5 inches, so his first legal bass of the year. Congrats on that. He said he took a couple of pictures and let it go. Then I heard from Tim Moore of Tim Moore Outdoors. He checked in with a couple of updates for us. I've been talking to him quite frequently this year. He's a guide up in New Hampshire, Lake Winnipesaukee. He hasn't been able to guide so far, but the restrictions were lifted in New Hampshire last week, so he is able to take clients out. Now, he said he's going to hold off for right now until June 9th. Reason being, he's got some stuff coming in. He's got a bunch of stuff from Daiwa. He's got his brand new Old Town Big Water 132 PDL for his clients. They're on the way. But in the meantime, he's still getting out there fishing. Been working on his new Old Town Sportsman Autopilot 136. Same kayak that I have, same kayak that we are giving away in the Coastal Kayak Clash, which I'm going to get to in a minute. But nonetheless, Tim went out, had it fully rigged up, went out for, started off on crappie at one of the little ponds that he had up in Maine, did really well, switched gears, went south for black sea bass, ended up spending a day on the water and did extremely well with a limit of black sea bass, a keeper blackfish, 8 short blackfish, all of course right about 15 inches, a pair of 16-inch fluke, and as he put it, enough sea robins to drive him batty on the day. Now, all the fish except for the fluke, including the blackfish, were caught on a Daddy Mac 1.4 Elite Deluxe, and the fluke were caught on the standard bucktail and teaser rig. Now, as I mentioned, the kayak. As we've talked about before, Fisherman Magazine's first annual Coastal Kayak Clash is underway, and we've been getting a load of entries. I'm really happy and really proud of all you out there, all you subscribers of the magazine that signed up for the tournament. Just how much you all have been participating, some great catches that you've been getting. We're going to have an update coming very shortly. There's going to be a full update on the leaderboard in the June issue, and we're going to be posting this online and updating. We've just been catching up on things, and honestly, we've just had so many entries coming through. It's been difficult. We're pleasantly surprised with the response so far. So, if you're unsure, if you haven't paid attention, haven't caught it, the details on the Coastal Kayak Clash. It's a subscriber-only, kayak-only fishing tournament. So basically, you got to subscribe to the Fisherman Magazine, digital or print, whatever you want to do. Once you've subscribed, just go to the Fisherman Magazine's website, fisherman.com. Find the Coastal Kayak Clash under the drop-down menu on the upper left. Click on that, register. Basically just enter your email address so we've got you logged as a participant. Then you've got your selection of 8 different categories, 9 different species: blackfish, sea bass, fluke, porgies, what else? Sea robin, hardtail, false albacore, and bonita combo, a little bit of everything. And you're going to compete throughout the season. It runs from May 1st to November 31st. Whoever accumulates the most points at the end of the season by placement, first, second, third on the final leaderboard, is going to win an awesome, brand new Old Town Sportsman Autopilot 136, powered by Minn Kota. It is an absolutely sick boat. I have one of my own. I've been on it. Got a review of it, of course, at thefisherman.com. We've also got some other amazing prizes from Humminbird. We got a Helix 9 that we're giving away. Just a ton of great stuff. So if you're a kayak fisherman and you're a subscriber, or if you're not a subscriber, subscribe today. There's no additional charge to sign up for the tournament. You just got to register your email and you are good to go. And then maybe you will end this season with a brand new kayak. And one of the participants in the Coastal Kayak Clash, Addison Carter from Connecticut, local guy, he took a ride up to Massachusetts this week to do a bit of bottom fishing. That's where the action has been best. Got in some jumbo porgies and black sea bass on jigs. Did really well. Got a bunch of entries coming in. Now, like I said, we've got the update coming very shortly. It's going to be in the June issue. It's going to be online. Pretty sure Addison is going to have a couple of places on there. He's been submitting a lot of fish. Nice job there. So next up, Michael Hecker sent me a report through Facebook. You could touch base with me through my personal Facebook page, through the Fisherman Magazine's Facebook page, or via email at tlapinski@thefisherman.com if you've got some photos and reports that you want to pass along. So that's what Michael did. Checked in with me on Facebook. He said he absolutely crushed the black sea bass over this weekend in Buzzards Bay. He said almost all of the fish that he hooked into were jumbos with very few shorts in the mix. And the action was so good, he even got into some striped bass that were hitting his teaser, the Tsunami Glass Minnow. So nice job, nice mixed bag for sure up there. Then I got one more Massachusetts report before we move on. Fisherman subscriber Tom DeRozier sent me a photo of his buddy, Kenny Deck, with a 4.5-pound black sea bass landed once again in Buzzards Bay. This was on Monday. Now, Tom and Kenny had their limit. They were fishing in the morning. By noon, they were heading in off the water with a full limit of jumbo in excess of the minimum size sea bass. That bite is on fire right now. Moving on down into Rhode Island, where unfortunately black sea bass season is not open at this time. Doesn't make any sense, not for today's discussion, but nonetheless, Captain Tony Garuna of Booked Off Charters sent me a text this weekend. We were going back and forth, touching base. He was checking in because he's finally given the okay to sail with non-residents on June 1st, and he sails out of Rhode Island. Now, state formula for passenger limits is a little bit confusing. There's a whole formula that's got to be done. You can see the exact details right now at a news story at thefisherman.com. It covers all from New England through the Mid-Atlantic on what states have which regulations for the for hires. You know, some of the other boats in Rhode Island, the big boats are like the Francis fleet, I believe, has 27 passengers they're allowed to take as of January 1st. 7Bs is probably right around there. But in talking with Tony, excuse me, he can sail with 6 passengers. It's a smaller boat. He said he's going to keep the boat sanitized throughout the trip. Obviously, in between, he's going to do a full sanitize of the boat. Passengers also going to have to follow state guidelines for face coverings. But with that all said, He got the boat back in the water on Thursday and went out for a little bit of private fishing. Took his wife, his daughter, and his daughter's boyfriend. They went out for cod and did extremely well. They ended up with 26 keepers to 18 pounds in about 3 hours of fishing. They also had a bunch of shorts to throw back. I'm sure they had some sea bass probably mixed in there as well, which again, got to get thrown back. He said fluke fishing should be going stronger day by day. He is ready to go for that if you want to do cod. Now, he did note he's pretty well booked right now. I'm sure a lot of the bookings that he had early in the year were just kind of rolling over, but nonetheless, he's got a few dates left, some weekdays throughout the summer, a couple of nice prime early fall dates. So if you want to get out with Tony, runs a great boat, booked off charters. His phone number is 401-741-2580, and see if he's got any open dates that meet up with your schedule. And I'd advise, even if they don't mesh with your schedule, change your plans and get on the boat with Tony. I also heard from Fisherman subscriber and a regular video contributor. You're going to recognize this name if you've been following along. Anthony Renato, fishes Rhode Island all the time. He got out for the first time this season on Sunday. Went drifting off of Watch Hill with fluke as his target. He said, well, it's not the best of days, but nonetheless, by day's end, he had a pair of keepers over 20 inches, a handful of shorts mixed in throughout the day, but nonetheless, it was a great day on the water. Had a blast, first trip, shake down, catch some fish. You can't complain about that one bit. And last up in Rhode Island, before we move on, heard from Carlos El Capitan, as he's been fishing around Bristol for tog and doing quite well. Now, one of his recent trips produced 14 fish between 2 anglers with just 6 keepers retained from 18 to 20 inches. He said all the fish were caught on a 2-ounce jig, neon green, tipped with green crabs. Now, the Rhode Island spring blackfish season closes on May 31st, so get in on the bite now before it closes out. And rounding out things this week, we're going to move on down into Connecticut. We had a good variety of fish being caught once again. First up, heard from Jim Lucy. I fished with Jim a couple of times before, seen him around. Fishes with Captain Mike Roy of Real Cast Charters a lot, and that's what he was doing this week. Normally, the duo is targeting stripers. That's what I did when I fished with those 2 guys before. This time, they changed it up, though. They shot across the Sound, went over to Peconic Bay, hunting big hubcap porgies, and Jim said they absolutely loaded up as expected. Now, that bite over in Peconic Bay has been great. There's always some mega porgies in the spring. Always a lot of weak fish rolling through there. I've been over there bluefishing in the spring. You get some mega bluefish that roll in. Check out the story I posted at fisherman.com a couple of years ago. I went with the guys on the Black Hawk for a night bluefish trip, and it was a slammer blue fest. I mean, smallest fish was probably 10, 12 pounds. We had fish up to 18, 19 pounds that night, and that's what you can expect on those Peconic Bay trips. Heard from another Connecticut angler that took a ride over to New York waters. This time, Brian Weiss. He was working the south side of Fishers over the weekend, targeting fluke, and he landed his first keeper of the season. Not a bad fish at 26 inches. Now, we got the big flatty on a Joe Baggs tackle rattle fluky and a gulp saltwater grub combo. Absolutely deadly, obviously, for fluke. I love Joe Baggs jigs when I'm going out fluking, sea bassing. It's one of the first things out of the box for sure. And then sticking with fluke, also from Joe Panowich, sent me a picture of Marissa Rockwell from Durham, Connecticut with her first fluke of the season. Also landed off of Fishers Island. So it sounds like that fluke bite off of Fishers is starting to go. Been hearing of some bait around there, so I'm not terribly surprised. So Ed is good to know. I know I passed the word along to a couple of guys that are planning on heading out this weekend. So hopefully we get some more Fishers Island fluke reports in next week's video. And next up, we've got striper fishing in Long Island Sound. Now, honestly, it's been, at best, spotty for stripers. Personally, my spring striper season so far has been bad. It's been all schoolies for me when I've been getting out, hitting the rivers, hitting the surf. Swam around in the wetsuit for 5 hours last night and didn't even have a touch. So it's been a tough spring, but some people have been finding fish, especially up the Connecticut River, up around Middletown through Hartford stretch. It's been pretty good. Even some of my friends that still live up in western Massachusetts, up by the Holyoke Dam, have been getting some really good fish. But I think it's about that time the fish are starting to drop down. I heard from Jason Davidson. He said he landed a solid bass on a white pencil popper the other evening. He agreed the fish are starting to drop down. Water's warming up. Water temperatures are increasing. The water level is dropping. Usually starts to push out the fish, but he had boatmate Joshua Lloyd was with him. Also got a nice fish on a popper. They had a bunch of other fish that evening. Getting them on a variety of options: pencil poppers, dock spooks, Joe Bags tackles, Patriot fish, tactical angler darters, a variety of stuff. But I really feel, and they kind of agreed, those bass are going to start moving down towards the mouth of the Connecticut River. And speaking of the mouth of the Connecticut River, I actually talked to Captain Joe Diorio of Joe Diorio Guide Service. He was working the lower river recently, and I actually got in the printed reports this week, a lot of references to bluefish. Well, lo and behold, Joe sent me a couple of pictures of some massive blues that were caught in the lower river by a couple of his clients recently. Now, a lot of guys complain when the bluefish show up. Honestly, I'm happy to hear them around already. First off, pound for pound, you can't beat a bluefish. Second, when those big blues are around, and the bunker are around like we've got here in the lower river as well, it really, really improves the fishing, I find, for striped bass, especially in the surf. What it does is it corrals some of those bunker in. You can find a little bit more predictable schools of bunker. Rather than the bunker swimming around Long Island Sound all willy-nilly doing whatever they want, they are being hunted. They bunch up. You've got that chum in the water when the bluefish do find them. So I'm happy to hear the bluefish around. I hope that they stick around. And there's already some bass mixed in. Joe said that they had some bass as well, and then he bounced out into the sound and hit some sea bass, which I'm going to get to in just a minute. I'm going to stick with the striper reports for now, though. Nate Dornfeld was fishing some protected waters a little bit west of the Connecticut River. He was fishing with his dad. It looks like they were on a canoe in some very protected waters. He caught and released his first striped bass of the season. And moving down west in the Sound, talked to Chris Parisi, good friend of mine, sent me a nice picture. He said he was doing a little bit of homeschooling lessons with his son, Julian, recently. Now, the first lesson of the day included catching and properly handling and processing bluefish. Excellent course. Could have stopped right there, but no. We had lesson number 2 was up, and that was in the preparation of the bluefish fillets, which involved dry brining the fillets for smoking. Now, that isn't something I've done. I always do a wet brine. Had an article recently in the weekly on wet brining for the smoked bluefish. Chris did them this way. He actually passed the recipe along to my buddy Chris Wall, who did it with some trout, said it's excellent. So if I can get into some of those bluefish, I'm gonna have to try out that dry brine recipe for the smoking. It looks like it came out really, really good. And I also heard from Mark Alamina. He was fishing off Hempstead Harbor in Western Sound on Friday with his buddy Joe Gambella. Mark caught and released his first striper of the season, a nice 33-inch fish on a chunk of bunker. Mark reports there was lots of bait in the area. There was adult bunker, a bunch of small stuff. Those adult bunker were out mid-sound, and they all had schools of bass on them. I saw a couple of passing reports, fish to 40 plus pounds in the Western Sound this week, so maybe finally those fish are starting to come this way as well. But they didn't stop with the stripers. They switched over and started doing some sea bassing as Long Island Sound sea bass action blew wide open. It was starting the end of last week with that weather that we had this holiday weekend on Saturday. As soon as that cleared, it seems like out of the blue, the sea bass were all over the place. Joe landed a really nice sea bass off of Stamford that day that they were out. But it seems like primarily, as usual, the body of sea bass is a little bit east of the sound, and it really ramped up. First report I got in, Chris Jensen sent me a picture of a pair of 22 and 24-inch sea bass landed by his wife Michaela off of Clinton. Chris said they landed 8 keepers in less than 2 hours of fishing, so that's a nice day for sure. Also in that mid-sound area, Pete Hawley and his son Tide hammered the sea bass this weekend on the Jennifer Lynn. Now, those mid-sound waters off that Clinton, Westbrook area were pretty much, from what came through my way, the epicenter of black sea bass action, as is pretty much expected. Talked to people all winter long at the shows that we did have about just that subject, the excellent sea bassing in that area. I also got reports from a bunch of other anglers that I did not have time to get to, but I wanted to give you guys credit. Thanks to John Mizuko, Mike Primerico, Evan Camoon, and TJ, Rock and Roll Charters, they all did really well in that Clinton, Westbrook area of the Sound on the sea bass. I'm trying to get out there myself. Obviously, these COVID-19 social distancing concerns are a little difficult to work with, but we will see. Perhaps by next week I'll have gotten out there anyway. All right, before we go, I got a couple of freshwater reports to end on. First up, you always hear reports from him. He's a regular contributor to the magazine. Kyle Quinn sent me a picture of a big crappie that he landed this week. And he said the crappie fishing is absolutely on fire right now. And he's also been doing really well on some solid pre-spawn largemouth bass with his buddy Brian, who's had a birthday this week. So happy birthday to you, Brian. Hopefully you were able to get some fish on your birthday. That's something I always try to do, is fish on my birthday. And then we've got a couple of trout reports to finish things off. First up, I got a really cool picture from Andrew Droney. He said he was Euro nymphing on the Farmington River on Monday morning with mayfly and caddis nymphs on a 2-fly rig. He said they had a lot of fish to be had all over the river. Now, it's funny, if I'd have read that report 6 months ago, it would have been gibberish in my head. But as I've mentioned in a couple of the past reports, and if you follow me on Instagram or on Facebook, you'll see I've been doing a whole bunch of trout fishing this spring, thanks in no small part to one of the columns that we had in the weekly issues from Jerry Audette a couple of weeks ago, talking about small stream brook trout fishing for native brook trout. Primarily, I've been targeting the stockies for right now. I'm getting back into the fly fishing, relearning how to do all this stuff. So it's been all about stockies, but I do have some plans for the summer to head out and look for some natives. But this weekend, I was looking for stockies. Got out on Monday. I hit the Salmon River in Connecticut. Fished both the TMA as well as the fly-only section, and I landed, after I finally found some fish, a bunch of freshly stocked brookies and a handful of rainbows. Now, I had a few fish on nymphs early on, was trying a couple of different patterns, but it wasn't until I switched over to the woolly bugger that the bite really kicked in. Had them on black woolly buggers, brown. When one color would slow down, I'd switch over, and it was like throwing fresh meat in the water, and they were all over it. Now, one thing of note, the state did announced last week, Connecticut, that they are done with the spring stocking for the year. I want to commend the state. They did a great job. Actually, all the New England states did a really, really good job this year, both getting fish out there, dealing with social distancing concerns over COVID-19, and the public in general did a very good job of minding those social distance requirements. Even when we had some really good bites on some freshly stocked fish, for the most part, didn't run into any problems. All right, well, there you go. There's a lot going on this week. Hopefully we touched upon a little bit of something to help you out. But of course, if not, if you plan to head out and fish this weekend, be sure to start off your trip by visiting thefisherman.com.
Steigercraft boats, built by people who fish our waters. Serious anglers choose Steigercraft for their 40 years of boat building experience right here in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic. Visit steigercraft.com for a dealer near you.